Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Digital Pan-Asian FP&A Board. Today we will be talking about the art, science of XP&A Business Partnering. My name is Hans Goben, and I am an international FP&A Board member and FP&A Trends Ambassador. And today I'll be talking to you facilitating the meeting, but also taking you through the art and science of XP&A Business Partnering. We are today joined by over 500 members of the FP&A board and 5 great panelists. So we're looking forward to a great meeting. These are the discussion subjects we have had in the Asia Pacific region in our prior meeting. So I will let you guys have a read of it. Let me share with you the agenda for today. So today we'll talk about the skill sets required for XP&A business partnering, how to execute XP&A business partnering, a case study with Asurion, business partnering behaviors, how can modern technology enhance and transform business partnering models. We will go on to talk about integrative intelligence in XP&A. We will conclude with recommendation, and then we will move on to our Q&A session. It is now a good time for me to introduce to you our panelists for today. So I would like to ask our panelists to join us with their webcam. So first is Douglas Young. Douglas is Senior Director, APAC Finance at Genesis. Douglas is a Singapore FP&A board member and joins us from Singapore. He has 20+ years in finance, leading FP&A teams in various different countries. He also gives talks at universities in Hong Kong and Singapore. Douglas, great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Hans. Great to be here.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Our second speaker is Paul Lenny, who's Southeast Asia CFO at Asurion, Singapore FP&A board member again, and joining us from Singapore. He was a founder member of the finance at Asurion, of Australian Asurion, sorry, who helped develop the team and grew the business. Today, Paul will talk to us around how to execute that XP&A business partnering model, specifically in Asurion. Paul, great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Hans. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Our third speaker today will be Emma Martin. Emma is Commercial and Finance Director at Ogilvy. Emma again has over 20 years leading finance teams in Europe, in Australia, and various countries in Asia. Emma has a track record of lifting capabilities from information crunchers to insight providers, which comes in very handy because she's going to talk to us about commercial behavioral aspect of XP&A. Emma, very welcome. Great to have you with us.
Looking forward to it, Hans. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Emma. Fourth speaker today will be Jitu Varghese, who's Senior Consultant at Jedox. Jitu is an enterprise performance management expert with a finance background and some 14+ years experience in actually implementing solution advisory, architecture, project and vendor management. Jitu will talk to us around how we can use technology to enhance that XP&A business partnering element. So Jitu, welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Hans. Excited to be here.
Thank you very much. Finally, we have Brian Lapidus with us today. Brian is Director, FP&A Practice at Association for Finance Professionals, AFP. Brian creates and curates content on new FP&A developments and subjects. He also manages the FP&A Advisory Council, and Brian will very much talk to us today about integrative intelligence in XP&A. Brian joins us from Washington, D.C. today. Brian, great to have you with us.
Great to be here, thanks, and always good to work with the FP&A board.
Thank you very much, panelists. If you could turn your webcam off, I've got a few more slides to go through, and then we will come to our great presentation from our great panelists who are from Singapore, Australia, which I forgot to mention, Jitu is from, and from the USA. So moving on. A quick slide on FP&A Trends Group here, just highlighting the fact that we are today bringing Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Shanghai together. Also to highlight to you guys that we also started to offer on our members demand best practice workshop and FP&A consultancy. Good time now to do some housekeeping. So to let you know, it is a 90 minutes webinar. We have 4 polling questions, so please participate in the polls. We need your insight and insight from your organization. Please ask question via the chat box. The chat box is open and you can ask question as from now right till the end. We will answer them. If we can't, we will answer them via email anyway. Network with our speakers via LinkedIn. You have the handouts you can download. You will also receive a recording and a copy of the presentation within 2 days. More importantly, please give us your feedback. When we close the session, you will get a feedback survey session. So if you could do that, that'd be great. Good time to introduce to you our sponsors. So our technology sponsor is Jedox, of course, modern corporate performance management platforms. So thank you, Jedox. Our global recruitment partner is Michael Page. We all know Michael Page, one of the world's leading professional recruitment consultancies. And finally, we've got our global education partner, which is AFP, which is where Brian is from as well. So thank you, AFP. Now, quickly, I want to just take you through what is Digitized Xp&A Business Partnering and how it differs from the traditional business partnering. So business partnering has moved on. It is much more around collaboration, motivating and educating. And collaboration is cross-company wide, challenging the status quo, not just challenging, but being also the change agent with our analytical approach. Integrated, what does integrated mean? So company-wide, taking into account sales, marketing, operations, HR, finance, IT, etc., but also integrating our 3 key planning processes, which is strategic plan, business plan, and operational plan. And of course, very important is to leverage on technology to achieve this. I would like to quickly share with you very, very quickly the business partnering maturity model. You must have seen this before. It's very similar to the FP&A analytics maturity model, where we have the basic, the developing stage, and the leading stage. Very important here to pay particular attention to the leading stage, where collaboration is very important, which we've talked about. Knowledge of the business is very, very important. It embraces the XP&A knowledge. Degree of influence, where we are a trusted advisor, we are involved in decision making, collaborative approach, acting as a sounding board. The soft skills are very, very important. You will see in that leading stage, we're talking about challenging, ability to persuade, storytelling, being a great communicator. And the last 2 obviously is around analytics and technology to make the most out of the model. I will leave you with this thought and for you to think about, because we've got a polling question asking you later on as to where you are on that maturity model, in the basic stage, developing stage, or leading stage. It is now a good time for me to introduce to you our first speaker, Douglas Young, who's Senior Director at APAC Finance at Genesis. And Douglas will talk to us around the skill set required for XP&A Business Partnering. Douglas, you're very welcome. The stage is yours. Ready when you are.
Thank you, Hans. Hello, everyone. My pleasure to be here. My name is Douglas Young. and I am the Senior Director of Finance with Genesis here in Asia Pacific. Genesis provides call center solutions to major corporations around the world. And in the past year, as we all know, COVID has changed how customers interact with companies they do business with, which actually led to a boom in Genesis business. But also, Genesis recognized that we have to work on a more robust planning process to accommodate the growth and also plan for uncertainties that we might not see coming. So if we look at what the FP&A, Xp&A view is from a traditional standpoint versus what we are trying to move into, traditionally the planning process is a very finance-driven exercise, with the FP&A team coordinating with finance teams across the organization to do the forecasting or budgeting. This process is very financially driven. A lot of times we ask the what question. For example, what is the growth rate we're trying to achieve? What is the EBITDA target for the company? And for public companies, the planning process might start with the question, what does the company need to do financially to see an increase in share prices or a fair return to investors? And we will go over the motions of putting together the plan, and only after answering all these what questions, the business units and the functions will then work on the how questions. For example, how do we actually achieve the plan? How do we achieve the sales growth? And how do we plan for resources, etc., etc. So these how questions actually come after we have the plan hashed out. But with Xp&A, the biggest difference I see is the planning and budgeting exercise is more distributive and collaborative. And the business units and functions are actually asking the how questions much earlier in the process and providing that feedback which goes into the planning cycle. The Xp&A approach also empowers the business unit to participate and be key stakeholders in the process. And the benefit of that is that it drives a sense of ownership and accountability from the business owners back with the finance team and the company as a whole. So what does it actually entail for the finance team? What does it mean for the finance team going forward? There's actually a dilemma that I see in this situation, where the FP&A team needs to decide whether we stay very high level and focus on coordination and putting together the information, and also being the gatekeeper to make sure the company can achieve its overall financial goals. But at the same time, does the finance team, especially the FP&A team, go deep into the details and actually work with the functions or the businesses to come up with the hows? And to me, a good Xp&A professional needs to understand the details, being able to dive into the field with the businesses they support, but at the same time be able to pull back, stay high level, and make sure that what the hows or the questions that the business is trying to answer actually help achieve the overall financial target for the company. So it becomes very important for the FP&A team to be able to zoom in when needed and work on a lot of the details of the business, and then at the same time get back and take a big picture view of the situation. And with that in mind, what would be the skill sets that a finance professional needs to be successful at Xp&A? First of all, if we look at the more traditional skills on the left-hand side, FP&A professionals, a lot of times we were financial specialists, and we were really good at looking at financial statements and making conclusions from an accounting standpoint. The result is that analysis were more of an accounting-driven exercise, and the FP&A team is very finance-focused versus being business-focused. And we normally took on a gatekeeper role. The planning and budgeting exercise were also very process-driven, where the end result is really to deliver a set of financials within a set of deadlines. But on the right-hand side, those are the skills that are really important and well acknowledged by FP&A professionals as the way to move forward for the function. So under Xp&A, the process has shifted more towards the business, and the results are more focused on the actions to achieve the results. That is, how do we achieve the results versus what results we want to achieve. I see the skill sets being broadly divided into 3 areas. The first one is technical skills, second, business acumen, and finally, communication. Technical skills includes being a generalist. And here, when I say generalist, I do not mean someone who knows a little bit about everything. But I actually want to emphasize that in the Xp&A world, being a generalist is about being able to understand how different functions work and be able to help understand and define the KPIs for each of the functions we support. This will help the business focus on the right KPIs, help them track and interpret the KPIs, and finally translate those into financial results for the company. Another important technical skill is the data analysis side of things. Our analysis will have to go deeper than just the financial numbers, but really dig into the business drivers that impact the financial numbers. In other words, we have to know how the numbers work and how would that achieve the target that the business is targeting. Business acumen then becomes very important because under the Xp&A model, FP&A needs to speak the language of the business they support and understand not just the financial numbers, but how things actually happen in the field so we can provide more practical suggestions to the business. And in the process of building up trust with the business leaders, as Emma will talk more about in her presentation, we act as a sounding board for the business and even influence the business by integrating our knowledge of the business with a good understanding of the financial implications the actions may have. And finally, communication. As we get more and more data and the business are getting more and more data, we do not want to overload them with information, but we also need to interpret the right information and help business leaders understand how those data actually is relevant and impact the performance. Our ability to simplify a message that through visualization and storytelling then becomes critical when it comes to providing that critical piece of information to the business leaders. So how do we actually evolve our skill set from the left to right? First of all, I think as leaders in the FP&A function, we have to provide the right training. We can either do the traditional classroom training or online training, but we also can be collaborating with other functions like getting marketing to help provide some guidance on visualization and looking to sales to help brush up our presentation skills. And another easy thing to do is make sure that the team has regular interactions with the business we support and actively seek to understand the underlying drivers of the business. And this goes from the analyst level to the senior level for the finance FP&A team. And we should also be open to hiring team members with different backgrounds, like for hiring data scientists, for data analysts, and also look at people who are really good at process and implementing artificial intelligence, machine learning from a technology standpoint. So all these, I think, will help build a wide range of skills that we need to support the business. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Hans.
Douglas, great to hear from you. Great to hear about what were the skills before and what are the skills now required for an Xp&A function, and to hear of your live examples as well. Can I invite the two panelists, Paul and Emma, to join us and share with us their quick insight on Douglas's presentation, please? Paul, if I may come to you, Paul. Emma, let's go to you, Emma.
Sure, thanks, Douglas. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed your point about getting from what to how questions earlier. And I thought that was a really, really good point. And I'm also really excited about the skill sets on the right-hand side of this chart. I think what an exciting time to be in XP&A with opportunities to learn things beyond our traditional skill sets. So thank you for giving us some of those skills today that we can have a think about.
Thank you very much, Emma. Paul, are you there? Can you join us and give us your comment, please? I think we move on to the next piece of our presentation today. Thank you very much, Douglas and Emma. So having learned from our panelists, Douglas, and insight from Emma as well, if we can now look at what our attendees can tell us about their organization through our first polling question, which is, I am just about to launch this, so if you can vote, please. So where would you say your organization is on the XP&A business partnering journey? Yes, we run an integrated FP&A business partnering model. We do plan, second option, we do plan to implement such a structure in the near future. And thirdly, no plans for integrated FP&A business partnering. So again, first is, yes, we run an integrated FP&A business partnering. Secondly, we do plan to implement such a structure. And thirdly, no plans for an integrated FP&A business partnering. If you can vote, please, I'll give you another 5 minutes, sorry, 5 seconds, not 5 minutes. And I'm now going to close and share the results. So 38% said, yes, they already run an XP&A business partnering model. 39% saying they plan to, and 22% there is no plans at this point in time. Can I ask Douglas to comment on this, please? Douglas, a quick comment from yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that we have we're over 78% of companies already running some kind and planning to do so. So I think that's really the direction that FP&A is going towards in the future.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And Paul, are you there to give us your comment? No, Paul is not there. So let's just move on to the second. Just bear with me a second. So hide, and I'm now going to move on to our next session. So Paul was due to share with us his point of view. So if we move on to third, if you bear with me, which will be behaviors. So to talk to us about behaviors, we have Emma Martin today. Emma is Commercial and Finance Director at Ogilvy, and Emma will talk to us about business partnering behaviors. So Emma, the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thanks, Hans, and hi everybody. It's great to be with you today. I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about great behaviors that underlie business partnering. But first, a little bit about Ogilvy. We're one of the world's largest advertising, marketing and communications businesses, and we're all about making our clients' brands matter to their audiences. In Asia alone, you've got our stats here. This is just the Asia bit of the business. 32 offices, 18 markets, 29 cities and over 5,000 people. XP&A for us is part of the market finance function and not a separate department. So the finance guys mix up FP&A as part of their roles. And forecasting for us is a real mix of art and science. I'm going to talk to you today about 3 behaviors for great business partnership, and I'm going to leave you with a takeaway top tip at the end. Our goal as XP&A is to come back with forecasts that are challenging yet attainable. And through this, I want to say, building on what Douglas and Hans both said earlier, that partnership here, business partnership, is about having a conversation with the business and coming up with forecasts in collaboration with our business leaders. So that's the underlying what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to illustrate with 3 different quotes. My first point and first quote is from our founder, David Ogilvy. He said some awesome things, but one I'm going to push on today is if you want to be interesting, be interested. For me, this illustrates the point of understanding the business. Be interested in the business that you're in so that you can develop an interesting point of view about it. Now, understanding the business is a nice broad term, and you can certainly know a lot about the finances that are in there, but how do you really learn about what we do? People love to share. So give people the opportunity to come and talk to your xP&A team about what they do with their day jobs and what exciting things they've been working on. Explore the different departments and how they fit together. Get them along to your meetings to present, to show you the latest products, the latest services, to talk about the results and what their challenges are this year. Take the xP&A team on a field trip, go to the warehouse, go to the factory, go and learn more about the business from there. I think there are lots of ways to understand the business, but it really informs your point of view to first be interested in what we do and passionate about the place that you spend so many hours every day. For my next behavior, I picked another quote, one of my favorites from Stephen Covey: seek to understand first and then to be understood. I love this quote. It's about asking questions and being curious before you start just sharing your point of view in there. And for me, this illustrates knowing your audience. And this is really important for business partnership. You need to know not only the people that you're working with, firstly know about their goals and their drivers. Are they being measured on revenue growth this year? Do they need to get margin improvement? Are they being measured on customer retention or other KPIs? It's so important to understand the KPIs of the people that we're partnering so that you know where the perspectives are coming from and what they're trying to achieve. The other thing to know about your audience, though, is not just about the numbers, but also understand how they receive, process, and like to see their information. There are certainly people in the world like us that love nothing better than a great big spreadsheet with loads of info in it. But I know in my business, I work with creative guys. They really don't like numbers. And actually what they love is for me to give them 2 or 3 key insights. A simple dashboard with some color coding, a chart. It's much easier for them to interpret, to take in what I'm trying to ask them to understand, and importantly for them to understand it enough to pass on that information to their stakeholders and get those forecasts approved. So I think a big piece of that knowing your audience is knowing how they receive and process their info and presenting your numbers in a way that will get the insights and the action that you need. So do think about how different people need to receive info to learn. We also talked a little bit about storytelling earlier, and this knowing your audience is the basis of really good storytelling. I know storytelling is kind of a scary concept to a lot of us. We've spent most of our life pretty much maybe a little bit introverted, not so good at the whole storytelling thing, but I promise you it's something that you can learn and people would love to teach you, and the audience analysis is right at the base of that. For my final behavior today, I'm going to talk a bit about your brand and how you want to be perceived. I found this great quote, which is I would like to have a reputation for good judgment, for fair dealing, for truth, and for rectitude, which is in itself a fortune. Now, I must admit, I had to look up the word rectitude. Apparently, it means morally correct behavior or thinking. I thought that's perfect for finance. But I love those words of a reputation for good judgment and fair dealing. As a business partner, I'd love people to think that way about me, and that's why they come to me for advice. It's all about building that trusted advisor brand. Many of the finance departments of the world, unfortunately, have a reputation for always saying no. We definitely don't want to be those people. That's not partnership behavior. There are definitely times when you need to say no. Actually, it's our job to make sure that we look after the governance of the business, and when it's not right, we have to say so. But equally, on the flip side of that, we don't want to be the kind of partners that always say yes either. Pleasing people is great, but when it's not the right decision for the health of the business, it's not right either. But this is about people coming to you because you will challenge them, because you'll ask critical questions, that you'll be curious until you really understand what's under there. And ultimately, you will enable their goals and have a partnership conversation to help come to the solution together. If the answer is no, let that be an answer that you and your partner have come to through discussion and debate, and that by the time they leave the room, they agree it's a no as well. Maybe not a no, but a not right now, or not until you hit certain milestones. But partnership is all about having that conversation. But let us be people that have a reputation for good judgment and fair dealing, so that people want to come to us for that critical thinking. So my 3 behaviors for today are about understanding the business, are about knowing your audience, and are about your brand and having a reputation for good judgment and fair dealing. And I'm going to leave you with a tip on how to kind of make those behaviors stick. As some of these things are quite new to people, particularly those who are starting out in XP&A and wanting to learn. Just, walking in tomorrow and saying, I want to know my audience, sometimes it's quite hard to know how to start. So as leaders in XP&A, we need to model that behavior to the people in our team. If we don't know how to do it, there are people around. As Douglas said earlier, the marketing guys would love to help you with storytelling. There are people all over the business, data analytics guys will help you look at things in a different way. There are people around to help you guys learn how to do these behaviors, but it's important that you then help the people in your team to learn it too. And one of the best ways to do that is take people to meetings with you. If you're going to a meeting, take a friend. They don't need to input. It's okay for people to just come and listen, and then debrief afterwards and say, what did you learn? What was interesting in them? How might you look at things differently? So if you're going to a meeting on your own, stop and think before you do that. I wonder if I could take someone with me as an opportunity for them to learn a bit more and ask a few questions. So that's me on business behaviors. Thank you for listening, and back to you, Hans.
Emma, thank you for sharing all these live examples on the behaviors. Some of these things are so trivial, but we don't spend enough time thinking about it. And just bringing somebody along to a meeting, somebody junior, and help shape the way they behave as well is absolutely great. Can I ask?
Small things, but I think you can have quite a big impact.
Absolutely. Can I ask my fellow panelists, Paul, Jitu, and Brian, to join us and give us a quick insight on Emma's presentation, please? Paul, if I may start with you. Paul, I think you're on mute. We still can't hear you, Paul, I'm afraid. No. Brian, can we go to you, please?
Sure. So first, I'd like to thank Emma for giving me both a quote of the day and my vocab word of the day. That emphasis on fair dealing and rectitude and really the role of finance as a partner, I think I just want to really amplify what Emma said. Being a partner is a balancing act between providing service and what the business needs and maintaining the CFO's role. And I think she really hit the right note by saying it's not saying yes to everything. It's not agreeing to everything, to providing every report in every single way. It is about working together in order to achieve the ends of both the CFO and the business partner. One of our members, I think, had a great quote of how they think about it. Being a business partner means that you're a business person. You're just bringing the finance expertise to the table to that discussion. And I think, Emma, you really nailed that point very well.
Thank you, Brian. Jitu, can I come to you, please?
Sure. Firstly, I think, Emma, that was very insightful indeed. Thank you for that. A couple of points. Firstly, coming from a technology side of things and having interacted with several business users across these years, I've always been keen to understand different perspectives of how the business side looks at things, and thanks for that. Thanks for that perspective, and it's really good. Second one is your quote. If you want to be interesting, be interested. That really caught my attention. And your advice to finance teams to basically take the opportunities to understand different facets of the business is a really good one, in my opinion. Thanks, Hans. Back to you.
Thank you very much, panelists. Emma, thank you very much for the presentation, and guys, great comments as well. Let us now learn from our members who have joined us today about the skills they think that is required within their organization. So if you can please tell us, what skills do you think your organization need to develop for better FP&A business partnering? Is it data skills? Is it technological skills? Is it business knowledge? Or is it soft skills? If you can vote, please. Is it data skills first, technological skills, business knowledge, or softer skills? We have 40% voted already. I'll give you another 5 seconds. So what skills do you think your organization needs to develop for better FP&A business partnering? I will now close the poll, and I am now going to share the poll. So 17% want data skills, 12% are saying technological, 38% around business knowledge, and 33% around softer skills. Emma, can I ask you for your quick comment on this, please?
Sure. I'm actually a little bit surprised that data skills didn't get a higher ranking, but I guess it's how you interpret what you mean by data skills. So I think that whole data analytics thing is still something that's really, you know, burgeoning and growing out. What's data skills going to mean in the future? But I'm not surprised that business knowledge and softer skills are higher up, because that really has been the focus recently, and they are the easy wins, I think, in terms of things that we can do right now to get better at business partnering.
Thank you, Emma. Jitu, quick comment from you, please.
Yeah, I mean, definitely very interesting. Even I thought that technology side would be a bit higher, but and data skills, but it makes sense. The business knowledge is always a priority, and I agree with that. Back to
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So I'm now going to hide this, and we will now move on to our next part of the presentation. So the next part is all about how can technology help us to move to this next level. So to do that, we've got Jitu from Jedox, and he will tell us how we can use technology to transform XP&A business partnering model. Jitu, over to you. Ready when you are.
Thank you, Hans. Hello, welcome everyone from Melbourne. 8 p.m. great time. So I'll start off with a quote, and a quote from Henry Ford, which says, "Coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, working together is success." And I feel this message ties very well with the quote, and it stands true for technology as well. Beginning, which is the need to identify and prioritize the need for technology in your business process. Second, progress, which is execution and alignment of technology with your business. And finally, and the most important piece I feel, is the human piece, which is success, which is a harmony of people, process, and technology, which yields quick time to value. With that, I would like to introduce the 4 main pillars of this discussion, which I believe helps to enhance and transform your business partnering process. And I'm tying this back to what Hans had previously spoken to us about. 4 pillars, which is the collaboration, analytical approach, challenging the status quo, motivating and educating. And I'm tying each of those to the technology aspect of it. First one, collaboration, which ties nicely with extended planning and analysis. Second, analytical approach, which ties very well with data quality and integration. Third, challenging the status quo, which ties in with embracing AI and predictive. And finally, what I call the people piece, motivating and educating, which ties in with start small and deliver quick time to value. With that, what I will do is I'll explain each of these points in a bit more detail. I'll start off with collaboration. So for collaboration, what I'm doing is I'm going to bring two facts from the ground. So surveys which are done by different people. So the first one is around the burden of data gathering activities. 79% of people who were part of the survey said they spent at least 30% of the time on activities that didn't add value to the business, right? And second one is the importance of a finance role in supporting the business decisions. And the increase of finance's role, especially during this COVID crisis, it has actually increased tremendously. But unfortunately, 23% of them said that they were not ready for it. Now, what I would like to talk about is the solution or the goal of how technology could help in that space. And what I believe is the goal should be to look towards moving towards a holistic performance management, which is what we basically have right now is, departmental data which are in silos and from different systems to an environment where everything comes together, which is external planning analysis, which is your sales, your operations, and everything comes together and you actually have the vision for it. I'll cite an example quickly. I had a customer in the retail space. He already had a vision to where it wants to be towards the end. He wants merchandise planning in it and everything in it, but started off with management reporting, and that was his starting point. But he had the vision of where he wanted to be in the end, which I thought is pretty good. With that, I'll move on to my second point, which is the analytical approach. So data quality and integration. So a couple of points again from the field. First one being 80% of the CFOs agree that they must take ownership of the quality of and timeliness and depth of all the business information which is available. But unfortunately, 1/3 of them said they were not in a position to do so. Again, now connect this back to how technology could help in this area and make the CFOs feel much better. Yeah. So with that, if you see the end goal, start with the end goal, which is to improve the quality and completeness of the data to make effective business decisions. And for that, I feel there are a few things that they should take into consideration, especially when making a technology decision. First is to look for technology which has the ability to integrate across different data sources across the organization. Second, the ability to use predictive AI to check and validate data quality, if that's possible. And also something that's easy to use and easy for users, especially to transition over from Excel. So Excel friendly would definitely help in this regard. With that, I'll move over to my third point, which is challenging status quo, which ties back to embracing AI and predictive. So a couple of points again from the field. We all know this, Excel still rules. 84% of finance executives are saying, hey, they still do stuff in offline spreadsheets, which makes sense. And the second one is around the areas of the shift in current and future priorities. So there were actually 5 different priorities in this particular article, if you want to read it. But I focus on one of the main ones I felt was important in this discussion, which is the rationalization, simplification, and increased automation of financial systems. They already see the need in the current priority, which is 39%. But in the future, especially with COVID, they feel it's going to increase tremendously to 51%. It's quite an interesting point. And with that, I will go into the, what could the solution be and how could, technology help. With that, I start off with the goal is, of course, to leverage AI and predictive to respond rapidly and augment decision making, and I believe in that. And there are definitely benefits of using predictive and some things you should take into consideration. First one being increased, forecast speed and accuracy, which helps in better decision support, definitely. Second is freeing up resources to be more automated, and you can do forecasting more often. So you do daily, weekly, as opposed to say doing quarterly and yearly alone. using machine learning and all that to bring in sufficient size and quality of the data, so it can check the data quality and everything, and also to identify drivers, which is your internal drivers, external drivers. You bring that in to make better prediction. So definitely, and there's a lot more stuff into this, right? So you could have things around optimization, which would come in, say whether you're doing inventory optimization and stuff like that, which the technology will help with, or even route planning. And there's a lot of areas that predictive AI can help, even from a planning perspective. With that, I'll go into my last point, which I feel is the most critical in my opinion, which is the people piece, which is motivating, educating, and I would say start small and quick time to value. So with that, 2 points again. First being 67% of them saying that since COVID, and what bigger motivator than COVID, say that there's been acceleration in the digital transformation strategy since COVID, and 63% of them said that's also increased the the budget for the same. So that's definitely interesting. So with that, I'll go into the what is the goal. The goal here is, I believe, is to have a bigger vision, think big, but start small, and then be able to scale quickly. And to take that into consideration, there are a few points that I would say. First, define and prioritize the need. That's the most important thing. Second is start small. If you have to fail, then fail quickly and move on. And lastly, and most importantly, to promote user adoption, it's very important to involve the key stakeholders from an early phase, and that will definitely make things much better. And with that, I'll pass my time back to Hans. Thank you all for your time.
Chitu, thank you very much. Think big, start small, scale quickly. That sticks to my mind very definitely, because that's how it should be. Thank you for that. Can I ask our fellow panelists to join us? We have Douglas and Brian, and come and give us a little bit of a comment on this. If I may start with you, Brian.
Sure. G2, what you hit on is the promise of xP&A and why it's different from integrated business planning, and it's the ability to leverage technology throughout in order to not just do more, but to do differently. We had a member who said recently that the problem with finance or with FP&A is that we have highly intelligent people doing low intelligence work. And what the promise of Xp&A is to get us out of that low IQ work, to get us out of the reconciling and transporting data from one system to another, because that's where we spend your stat about so much time in data prep and data management and wrangling. That's the low IQ work. Let's get out of that and get to challenging the status quo, validating our drivers, checking external market assumptions and bringing those internal, and writing the scenarios that help us to think differently. That's the status quo challenge we want, and that's the opportunity that underlies this the technology, and that's why Xp&A is different from integrated business planning.
Thank you, Brian. And Douglas, your quick comment, please.
Yes, and Chitu, I think it's really interesting that companies before have access to all these AI and machine learning technology, but there were no really compelling reasons to push the FP&A function to use those technologies. So that's why we are staying on Excel so much. But I think with COVID, companies are now realizing that they need better tools, especially technology, to pull in information, just like Brian mentioned, external information, different things that are not available before, and then actually improve their planning process and utilizing all these new technologies. So COVID becomes like a really compelling reason and driver for the rapid acceleration of usage of these kind of technology. So that's I think it's a really interesting trend that we are seeing.
Thank you very much, panelists, and thank you for your presentation, Jitu. With that, now let us go to our members and hear how they're using modern collaborative technology. So let me launch the next polling question. Right, it has been launched. So do you currently use modern collaborative technology for FP&A? Yes, we do. No, we do not, but plan to implement it in the near future. No, we do not, and have no plans to implement anything. Please vote. If you can let us, please vote. I'll give it another 10 seconds. Just also a reminder to our attendees to please ask your questions via the chat box and direct it to our speakers as well. Thank you. So if I may now close the poll and share the outcome. 35% says yes, we do. 37% no, we do not, but plan to implement, so that's great news. And 28% say no, we do not, and do not plan to implement it at all. Jitu, can I come to you for some comments on this, please?
Okay, I was looking at the 28%, but that's definitely interesting. So I mean, it would be very interesting to hear the point of view and on why they feel that's the case. You know, what are the reasons, and that's definitely worth the thing. And you know, the 35%, yeah, that's good to see that's happening, especially in Asia. But yeah, I mean, as I said, the point that really intrigues me is the 28% and why they wouldn't want to do it. So that would be a good, interesting conversation to have. So
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jitu. Brian, can I come to you for some comments, please?
Sure. The question here itself is challenging, or leaves itself open to a lot of interpretation on the answers, because every bit of technology that we're using is becoming more collaborative by itself. Excel is more collaborative now than it was a few years ago as they've moved to online and they've multi-users. So for the people who are in the we do not plan on implementing it in the future, I would say it's coming for them anyway. It's going to be built into what used to be considered non-collaborative technologies. It is the way of working, and it is, you know, the way I think about it is you have a bell curve of people, of where people are distributed for their technological capabilities. And it's not a matter of moving to the right side of the bell curve, because you'll never get everybody who's leading edge, right? By definition, everybody can't be leading. But instead, what's happening is the entire curve is moving. Everybody is going to be more collaborative. Everybody's going to be more advanced. And there will always be some people who are leading edge utilizers of that tool. So this is just going to be the way to work, and it'll be built into everything that we use.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, both. Can I ask Paul if he's back with us, if he's got any comment on this? Paul?
So Hans, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul.
Okay. So I was actually a little bit surprised about this poll. And a couple of aspects is that virtually a third of people have actually done it, because that's a lot higher than I thought when I talked to my peers. And secondly, I thought that plan to implement in the future would be a lot higher, and the last one of not implementing it would be a lot lower. Pretty common to thoughts to what Brian was saying, and that it is happening, and this is a tidal wave that people have to get on, or they might be swamped in the future.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Paul. I will now, thank you very much, panelists, as well. I will now hide this, and we will move on to Paul's section of the meeting that we had before we lost him. Great. We're talking about technology today, and this had to happen. But never mind, to talk to you about how to execute the XP&A business partnering model, we have Paul Lenny, who's CFO at Asurion. Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Hans, and sorry about the couple of false starts before. Hopefully you can hear me okay now. So my presentation today is sort of going to be talking about how I can give you some practical tips and to excel at doing an XP&A business partnership model based on my learnings and also my experiences. So I currently work for a technology company called Asurion, and I was lucky enough to join it about 8 years ago when they first launched in APAC. And now I've had multiple finance and product roles, and currently I'm lucky enough to have dual roles as a Southeast Asia CFO, as well as the head of the business intelligence and analytics team looking after APAC. Now, as most of you will be aware, the purpose of being an FP&A or trusted business partner, or any of those words that you use, is to provide value to your stakeholders. Now, every company, and to be honest, every stakeholder defines value a little bit differently. And I'm not going to go into nuances of that because that's probably a 2-hour presentation on itself. But what I wanted to do is provide some thoughts, and particularly to give you a structure and how you can potentially implement it in your organization. So Hans, can you go to the next slide, please? So as with most projects, you need to have a structure. And my structure is to talk about the 4 Ps, which is people, platform, partnership, and process. As based on my experiences, I believe that unless you think about this holistically, even if you're strong in 1, 2, or 3 aspects, you're unlikely to be successful overall. So I recommend to follow this. Now I'm going to start with the hardest one to master, which is people, or the who will do it. Now, I'm not going to go into any great lengths as a lot of this was already covered off. However, I wanted to provide you some practical tips or suggestions based on my experiences. Now, if we talk about how to get a highly skilled and motivated team, I see there's 3 options. The first option is to buy the skill set by hiring externally. This is obviously the most expensive option to take, but it normally has the shortest time frame. There is some risk with this approach as well. Now, the second one is to train all of your existing staff. Now, this has a longer time to come to fruition, and there's also some weaknesses with this approach, but I believe as a finance leader, you sort of have the moral obligation to train all your existing staff. Now, what we have done in Asurion is done number 3, which is a hybrid of those. So we have trained a majority of our staff, and I'll sort of talk about that next, but we've also hired some skill sets that were quite hard to train for, or we needed a quick win. We also took this approach of transferring people between departments and roles if their skill sets matched or they had a strong desire to go on a different path, and that has some great benefits. Now, how we sort of trained up our staff was we created individual and team development plans. And what we first did is we worked with the consultancy to work with them to go, okay, where do we need to be in the future to be the next level of being trusted business partner? And then they came up with the skill set that we required. And then we did a gap assessment based on all of our existing staff and worked out where they are today. And then we planned for them how we can bring them on the journey. We then used this knowledge to inform them about this, and this had 2 real benefits. As we really want to be transparent to them about why we're doing this, so they knew the reason for the end goal. And secondly, we wanted to ensure that they had no worries about job security, and so we sort of took them on the journey about how to get there. It's also important to note at this junction that Asurion actually changed the structure of how we operated. So when we first launched 8 years ago, we sort of launched in each country, and each finance team was its own full ecosystem that provided all the support that it can to for itself. However, as we grew out to more countries, just the approach wasn't sustainable because we couldn't get greater cost efficiencies, as well as we couldn't leverage best practice. So then we took this opportunity to change the structure. So we create a centralized business intelligence and analytics team, and their job is to provide standardized reporting across the entire APAC organization, as well as provide their analytics, mostly level 1, but also some level 2 analytics for the countries to use as well. There's also another thing that we took here as well is, I don't know about you guys, but when we went to a meeting previously, we talked about a metric, there'd be like 3 or 4 people would all say, oh, they've got a different number that we've got. So what we did is we came up with, we call it one source of truth. And so how we did that was we created a data lake, we put all the data into one place and then built reporting cubes off that. And then as well as at that time, we created standardized definitions. So when anyone would go to a meeting, everyone would talk about not only the same metric, they also talk about the same definition, as well as everyone had that same number. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this wasn't easy to do, but it had clear benefits because we could take people from being report creators to being trusted business partner advisors to the business. Another tip that I would share with you is that when you implement a new tool or a process or an approach, there's about 20% of people are advocates of that. Then there's the majority is sort of sit on the fence, and there's another 20% that are detractors. My advice for you guys is focus your time and energy on those advocates and then use their network to bring all the other people on the journey. Now, the second P to think about is the platform or the how. This normally gets the most focus when we're talking about the initial feasibility studies. However, the actual execution doesn't always live up to what was sold to them. For instance, in Asurion, we're into our second BI tool in the last 4 years, and we are still learning new things. Now, my 2 biggest tips for you is fail fast and learn quickly. And that's sort of been mentioned a couple of times. And sort of how we did that is my approach or suggestion is to start with small. So start with a function, maybe a country, a geographical location, roll it out there, learn as much as you can, then change and iterate, and then you go to the next country or the next function. The second tip is kind of counterintuitive for some, but in our business, we sort of found out that we took a giant leap forward through a technology, and we sort of replicated a lot of our old reporting and old analytics into the new world. That, looking back, that wasn't optimal because we sort of worked out once we can leverage the new tool, we could leverage it better, and we sort of had to throw out a lot of the old things that we'd created, which took a lot of time and effort, and we sort of had to redo it all again. Now, the third P is talking about the partnership or the what. And I sort of mentioned just before about the benefits of utilizing new technology and how this can springboard the analytics and the insight that you can provide to your stakeholders, as ultimately this is the reason why FP&A or business partners are around. Also, don't be afraid to look at new metrics or new way of doing things. This might giving them real-time information on their phone or utilizing machine learning. That sort of ecosystem has been around, but it's starting to get the snowball effect, and more companies are using that, all in different ways, but it's definitely got clear benefits. Now, the last P is the process or the why. And my view is this normally gets the least attention. But ultimately, you need to do this well, as if you don't, in your stakeholders' eyes, they won't really see the real benefits. And you can do this in a couple of ways. It's not only when you roll it out, but also ongoing to make sure they're aware of it. And so my 3 biggest tips for you is communicate, and then lastly, communicate some more. Now, one of the cadences that we put in place was to have a monthly meeting with the geo leads and also all the functional leads as well. And sort of what we did there is we sort of asked them, okay, what new reporting or what new analytics you wanted, as well as go through all the existing lists of what they wanted. And the whole purpose of this was to bring them on the journey so that they're aware of what we're delivering, why we're delivering it, and also it was done to their time frame. And remember, feedback is a gift. Now, Hans, can you move to the next slide? So in summary, if you master the 4 Ps, then you'll reach the goal or the pinnacle which every business partner is aiming for, and that is providing true value to your stakeholders. Thanks, Hans. I'm going to hand it back to you.
Paul, thank you very much. Great presentation. I love the 4 Ps and how you defined it, giving us, live example as usual. I would like to ask our fellow panelists to come and join us and give us some comments. Douglas and Emma, if you can, please. And Emma, if I can come to you first, please.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Fantastic practical and some really good takeaway tips there for how to implement this. I loved a couple of them, particularly the communication piece to our finance teams to help them understand their value in the new world and be comfortable with their job security through the changes. Super, super important. Totally agree with you. And I also really like your single source of truth point. There's nothing that derails a meeting more than somebody literally sitting across from you saying, no, that's not what I've got. It is hard to do, and you've really got to go to people and wrangle their trackers off them and try and produce things for them instead. A difficult journey, but definitely a valuable one. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Douglas, can I come to you, please?
Yes, I think it's great, Paul. Thanks for the presentation. And the most impressive thing from your presentation is how you and Suren are approaching the career or development of people, which is really key in XP&A to allow people to pursue their interests and provide them with the room to grow their career and get into different areas if they're interested. So I think that's a really difficult thing to do because of there's always a cost to develop new talents, but I think that's really important for finance to be able to offer that to our employees.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you, Emma. And thank you again, Paul, for a great presentation. Let us now hear from our members in terms of where do they believe the organization is on that XP&A business partnering maturity model, the one that I shared at the beginning. So would you say you are at the basic state, a developing state, or the leading state, which I took you guys through? So if you can vote, please. Basic state, developing state, or the leading state. Also like to remind the attendees to please put your questions via the chat box and direct it to our speakers. We will try and answer all of them via email very definitely, but a few on the call today. Thank you. I have 65% people have voted already, so I'm going to close the voting and I'm going to share the outcome. So 33% believe they are at the basic stage, which is at the very beginning of the XP&A sort of journey, business partnering maturity. 62% developing and 5% at that leading stage. Paul, can I ask you for a quick comment on this?
Certainly. The results probably don't surprise me in that, but my question or my challenge to everyone in the basic and developing state is, do you know the real direction that you're heading into? Because sometimes that's the challenge I've found when talking to people, is they sort of know they need to take the next step, but they don't know what direction to take and also how to get there, right? So this is where sort of reach out to your professional network or some of the consultants can really, really help you. If you spend the time and effort up front, you can get that clear direction and make sure that you're going in the right way, at the right speed, at the right time.
Thank you, Paul. And Emma, a quick comment from yourself, please.
I'm glad that there are people in the leading state, because I think there's a lot to do to be there. I think they're all fantastic things to aim for, but I would challenge the leading state guys to say, what are you doing to help the rest of the XP&A community get there? So are you sharing back your experiences and helping other people learn? And if not, please could you?
Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, as well. Let us now hide this and move on with our presentation. So our last presentation today is around Integrative Intelligence, and to talk to us about it, we've got Brian Lapidus. Brian, very welcome. The stage is yours.
Great, thank you. You know, the premise of this webinar that FP&A Board has set up is that Xp&A is different, that the way we work is different. And so on the next slide, what you'll see is the way to start thinking about this, and that is, I want you to think about a cat video. Okay, well, really, I want you to think about how the internet works, but it's kind of a cliche to say people love cat videos. So let's think about how you end up watching a cat video on your screen. A piece of work is created, in this case, it's a video, and then it follows a series of transmissions across various networks, digital networks, people networks, organizational networks, connected data sources. And this is the model of how work gets done in an Xp&A world. A requirement is defined. It's disseminated across a collaborative, fluid team. It's altered at various steps all along the way until it is acted upon and it drives more action. This is what we mean by integrative intelligence. And for Xp&A to be implemented effectively, it really requires this integrative intelligence framework. So we know Xp&A, it's a term coined by Gartner, right? It's all about putting the distributed information from different business units, from algorithmic bots, from edge systems together into the planning function. So what comes next, starting on the next slide, are 5 ways that you can think about, that you can work differently on your process. So let's go one more slide ahead. So the first way is to think about your challenge as a professional, as a finance professional. It's to create common focus for everybody who has a hand in this Xp&A ecosystem. We probably have all found out that budgeting and forecasting may not be popular around the company, but they are essential. So if we're going to distribute ownership of these processes to other people, we have to ensure that they see the value in this. You know, Paul really had touched on this when he said that your process needs to have the right cadence for Xp&A to work. And you have to run your planning process in this way. Make sure everybody understands that value and bring in everybody around the company into your Xp&A system for the appropriate outputs. So on the next slide, you see this a second step, a second important way that work is different in an Xp&A world, and that is you have to build with modularity. You know, Jeetu talked about this when he said you have to think big but start small. And so when we build out our Xp&A, we need to have that vision of how it could work, but build it out unit by unit, so that every place it's deployed, you have those little successes that bring bigger successes, that you deploy it correctly with the steps, the mechanisms that everyone's going to follow. And this really is a tremendous opportunity to create the standardization around metrics and definitions and calculations and the sources and the uses of data. Building that alignment is hard, and getting everybody to buy in really requires that methodical, disciplined, modular build out. On the next slide, you'll see really the third area, the idea that you have to expand your view of who is on the team. It could be marketing, it could be supply chain, the call center, research. What we're doing with Xp&A is we have the mechanisms to allow everybody to be a part, to join in, and to do it seamlessly. Emma talked about how you have to think about the team, think about what draws the other person in. I love her comment, know your audience, right? The creatives don't want to see a whole page of spreadsheets. Well, if we're going to be bringing these people into our process that we've always owned, we have to think about how it works for them, how to bring them in, and we have to make it easy for them to buy in to this process that is so important and really so integrative. On the next slide, this is incredibly unglamorous. Developing project management skills is just kind of a fundamental blocking and tackling. But I think Douglas hit on this when he talked about how we need to move from a distributed point of view to a collaborative point of view. We are going to be managing this process. We are going to create the cadence, the communication, and thinking about how information is stored. That idea of taking a piece of work, breaking it apart to others, means that we are stepping back from ownership, or not ownership, we're stepping back from the day-to-day doing and becoming more of a managing. We're trying to get other people to assist in this process. Breaking down the process, keeping track of everybody, workflow processing, those things are enabled by xP&A, and what that does is that allows us to step back and put our time where it's more highly effective. And that's the last point. What our job becomes on this slide here is our job, it becomes providing effective challenge. The burden of gathering and preparing data, that time should come back to us. So we need to take that time and put it to productive use. And it's great that we can do that. Let's look at competitive benchmarks. Let's think about macroeconomic scenarios. Let's find ways to be the business partner with the finance perspective that we want to be. On the next slide, kind of my final thoughts. Here's just some other places to go for additional research on integrative intelligence, as well as other ways to explore these ideas of applying technology. My final thought is we have to remember that we are finance. We are stewards of company capital. Xp&A is a vision of technology-enabled finance organizations, and it allows us to be better at our jobs and provide more value to the rest of the company. It's going to require us to change the way we work. It should. We're not doing the same things we did 20 years ago. Let's go out, let's take this opportunity to be better at what we do and provide more value to the organization.
Brian, thank you very much. Great presentation. I really like the expand the view of your team in this whole piece. Of course, your team is not just your immediate team, is the key message there. Can I ask Jitu to give us some comments on Brian's presentation, please? Jitu, if you can join us, please.
Yep.
Jitu. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, definitely very interesting indeed, and it kind of ties in with what I feel is quite important, the people piece and the human element and how this all ties together with technology. And I completely agree on that aspect of it. So, and again, Brian, great session. I loved every word of it. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you very much, Jitu. If we now quickly move on to the next part of our presentation, I would just quickly like to summarize this part in the 9 steps to FP&A analytical transformation as a key conclusion to our session today because of time. Of course, all of this has FP&A or XP&A business partnering element to it. We're starting with the analytical culture. We talked about data quality. We talked about collaboration. We talked about all the analytical aspects with the key drivers, driver-based modeling, implementing a collaborative system that Jitu's taken us to and through. We talked about Excel and automating routine. Very important is scenario planning in this day and age and how we as business partners can help with scenario planning. And finally, all of that helping us to make the right sort of decision for our organization. Our panelists have covered all of these different aspects of XP&A business partnering, and I hope you guys have learned quite a lot today. With this, we will now move on to our Q&A session, which is the last part of this session. I would like to ask the panelists to come and join me, and I would like to ask Douglas the first question. Douglas, if I may, how is FP&A Business Partnering different to Xp&A to yourself and within your organization? What are the biggest changes have you seen?
I think the biggest changes is when I mentioned being a generalist, and the more important thing is to help the business connect the dots and translate the business actions into financial numbers. So we're really going into the details of the businesses and help them understand how their actions actually affects the P&L or the balance sheet or cash flow in a very business-oriented manner.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Thank you for that. Paul, if I may come to you as the second panelist or with the second question. What are the key critical roles that you've seen for implementing an FP&A or Xp&A business partnering model? What are the key roles?
It's sort of, Emma touched on this, is to be able to understand the business, speak their language, and also have good EQ skills, not just IQ. But I like the quote that sort of Brian said, is that project management is an unutilized skill set. And it's not just for project management, it's just for everything that you do. If you can roll out something and have a good time frame and communication, all that, it's so important for the end result, because so many finance people spend 90% of their time or 99% of their time doing the things that the business doesn't see, and they forget that last 1% which the business sees. So they need to spend more time on that business-facing sides to get real benefits.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for that. Emma, question to you. Of course, you talked about the behavioral aspect of Xp&A. What if the culture of the company is not ready to change for Xp&A vision? How can we influence? How can FP&A? How can we influence to make those sort of changes? What can we do on culture?
Wow, that's a great question, and I think the biggest thing is executive sponsorship, actually, because there are definitely older or the more traditional businesses that these changes are going to be tricky for them, and it's not a place that they're comfortable going. They can't really see the end result and know where they're going. So I think it's about making sure that you explain to the people who are the leaders of the business why you're doing it, where you need to go and get their buy-in, and then it's about them modeling the behavior that you need the rest of the business to be and leading the way themselves. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you very much, Emma. Jitu, you're up next. Great question for you. Of course, they picked it up from your slides. You talked about start small. Can you give us an example of how we can start small within FP&A or within what you were talking, please?
Yeah, I mean, again, it always comes back to whenever we have that conversation with the customer, I think always goes back to the part about what is the priority, right? What are your priorities in the organization? What are you trying to address, and what should go on first, right? So that question definitely goes back. Of course, we can give suggestions around how it's worked for others, but the best one is always look at your own thing and say, hey, which aspect of it, because there are a lot of elements in it, you split that into the key stuff that you need to address and take one by one. So you take the smallest pieces first, which are most critical, solve that, and you see the value, the time to value immediately, right? And you're working on that, and you continue and do the other aspects, and they all come together then, right? In the end, it all comes together, and then it starts to work pretty well. And I have a customer who did exactly that. We start off with, say, management reporting, just that, but he had a vision, right, to go into do more stuff. So he just did P&L part of the management reporting, which then that financial consolidation on the P&L side, and then for example, went into the balance sheet and cash flow, so it became three-way in that sense. And then now he's planning to move into doing merchandise planning and demand planning and bringing all those elements into the system in one integrated way, for example. So there's a lot of potential by actually starting small and seeing that value come through very quickly.
Jitu, thank you very much for that. Thank you for expanding on that. Question to Brian. Brian, again, somebody's picked on expanding view of your team as being a key element of integrative finance. The question is, how do you do that? How do you include internal and external, especially from a cultural sort of element in terms of trust, in terms of getting people from outside being part of your team?
Just to clarify, is the question, how do you build the trust, or how do you bring them into that view of the planning team, or having a hand in the planning team?
I think a bit of both, to be honest with you, Brian.
So the question, I would reframe it and say, how do you find out who adds value? And the people who have value are the ones you want to talk to. And you might find that it is somebody in accounting, and you have to go and find out, what the reserves are going to be for the month. Or it could be someone who's not an employee but a vendor who is so tightly integrated that your APIs between their systems and your systems are linked in a way that their forecast impacts your forecast. So your expanded view of the team is anybody who can add value to your forecast or to your analysis. And then you want to apply a lot of what the other speakers here have mentioned in order to build the trust, to have the common definitions, the common terms, to see both the details of what they do in the context of the big picture that the company is trying. In the end, right? In the end, it's all about how do we add value to the company, and then who else adds value to our work that allows us to do it. That's who you want to connect in your XP&A universe.
Brian, thank you very much for that. Members of the panel, thank you very much for answering the question. I've got a last few slides to go through. If you can turn off your camera and go off mute, that would be great. So what is up next? So of course, we've got a few great meetings for you lined up. AFP Finex, 15th to 17th of June. You can see the where to go on here and register for it. So please, it is complimentary. Please come and join us. Upcoming FP&A Trends events. The combined power of human and artificial intelligence in FP&A, Roche case study, April the 27th. The FP&A Trends webinar, how to manage uncertainty, on May the 12th. It is now a good time to say thank you to our sponsors on the day. So Jedox, Michael Page, AFP, FP&A Trends. Thank you very much for sponsoring the event. A big thank you to our panelists for joining us and sharing the insights. Hopefully, all of you will benefit from the presentations. And finally, a big thank you to all of you for having attended today. Hopefully, it's been quite a good meeting, and there's lots for you to learn from. A way to link up with us, so please do so. And finally, just before I close the meeting, just a quick reminder that you can keep sending your questions. We will answer those that we didn't answer via email. But please, when I close this session, remember there's a feedback session. If you can, please give us your feedback. That will be great. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And this now concludes our meeting for the day. I hope you had a great session with us. Thank you and goodbye.